Hey YouTube, it's Petey Two Finger, and I'm here to gripe and complain once again. This is something that this information actually might be useful to people who are into building guitar pedals, or if you're not that experienced at it and you're interested in learning more about building guitar pedals. So what I wanted to talk about is buffers. Now, a buffer is usually uh, they're made with it's a very small circuit. It's almost like a line driver, and this pads out your signal. It brings your signal up and makes it stable. It'll do a lot more than that when combined with an effect circuit, in that it just makes them stable. It makes it so no matter what you're connecting, you're going to get the same effect, uh, whether or not. If you don't have that buffer in there and you plug it into something else, they can mate with each other and do certain things that may be undesirable, may be desirable. Excuse me. In some cases, if we have a buffered effect in front of a vintage fuzz circuit, it's not going to play nice. It's gonna make the vintage fuzz circuit sound poor. It's going to make it sound bad. Uh, Now, when we look at DIY effect circuits, typically they don't have buffers. They do not have them. Whereas if you look at, like, take a look at a schematic for a Boss OD1. There's a buffer before and after the circuit, and they're all like that. All respectable pedals, unless we get into boutique. So why is that? Well, let's consider why it could be. Number one, would you mind getting me a refill, honey? It saves the DIY builder. Uh, it saves you the parts and the labor, and makes the circuit less complicated. So when we build a pedal board, ideally, what you want on the pedal board is the very first plug where you're coming in. Let's say you're gonna build a pedal board of true bypass pedals. Well, what you're gonna want, the proper way. This is verbatim. This is Bible. This is uh, what people are doing. Is when your guitar cable comes into the first pedal, like let's say your tuner, that has a buffer on it. Okay, so that buffer uh, negates any signal loss that we would have encountering through all of the connections, the jacks and the little patch cables. And then there's on your last pedal, like let's say you have a reverb or a delay, you would have a buffer on the output of that to pad out the line going to the amplifier for that long cable run going to your amp. So all of the pedals on the pedal board do not need buffers, and it'll be just fine as long as you have one in the input and one in the output. And they, meaning the guys who release these schematics and Vero layouts, assume that you comprehend that and you're good with it. It's not always the case. Like me, I build pedals, and I'm building them not always necessarily for a board. It's like I want to build pedals to collect them and to use them in situations where, well, I'm just going to plug this one pedal in, okay? And if I do that, well, it's a true bypass pedal and there's no buffers. So then I run into these problems of signal degradation, and oftentimes feedback oscillations, really nasty stuff, which uh, if you build a pedal and it's doing that, and then you think, oh, I did something wrong. Let me start troubleshooting. Let me get in there with the iron. Because an experienced builder knows, ideally, we cut once. We solder that part in there. By cutting, I mean cutting in. It's not the best word, but that's how I speak. Uh, hey, Mr. Bow Wow.
Speaking of speaking.
Chickabee. Our cat is vocalizing. So, yeah, it's not great to be removing a bunch of parts and troubleshooting a circuit it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. If you've run into this problem, I built my pedal and it's squealing. Well, I can help you. Go and grab one of your Boss pedals, a store-bought pedal, or build yourself a buffer. Uh, the quickest way to do it is to grab your DS1 or whatever buffered Boss pedal you own, put it down in front of the circuit that you built. Plug your guitar into the DS1 and then a patch cord into your circuit. And you don't need to turn your DS1 on. It can be off because that's what's going on. Because that buffer is going to solve all those issues. And then you're going to see, well, I didn't make a mistake and I wasted a bunch of time going into my soldering iron and playing around trying to troubleshoot the circuit I built. So this is an important thing to know. And again, why do they, when they, you look at why is it when you look at a layout on tagboardeffects.com, none of them have buffers? Well, it's because of what I told you. They assume that they assume that you're going to have your tuner. Your TU2 is going to be the first pedal, and that probably maybe you're going to have like a DD7 as your last pedal. So there you go. You're covered with the buffers. And it I know people are going to say, it doesn't matter. The buffer doesn't matter. Well, to me, it does. It matters big time. I'm not a cork sniffer, but the 3 dBs of boost and the stability of a non-squealing, non-feeding back pedal, meaning it's a distortion or overdrive, and when you plug your guitar into it and you turn the volume up to 9 or 10, it's just going to start squealing and making all kinds of, it's not stable. The circuit is going to make all kinds of horrific noise unless you have a buffer. So, yeah, why do they not do it? Well, it makes the layout a lot easier. It's cheaper. You don't necessarily need it. And the thing that sucks is my builds, when I build a pedal, there's no room for me to build 2 additional buffer circuits on little Vero sections and then have those floating around in there soldered in. It, like, to me, ideally there would be the Vero layouts would have one version where there's no buffers and one where the buffers are built in. Because how much extra space is it going to take to include those buffers? Which, I mean, I get it. Everyone is trying to cram their layouts down so you can put them in one of those pedal boxes that's that big. You know, we need to have 175 pedals on a board that's this big. So that doesn't leave, that's 2 centimeters per pedal is what they're trying to cram everything into. And I'm weird. I'd rather have buffers and everything. I really would. So if I'm going to go, I want to compare this overdrive with this fuzz, I mean, I guess what it comes down to is you need to be aware of it. You can build yourself. I have a very small buffer in a very small box. I really need to build another one of those. I should have 2. Ideally, I would have 2 battery-powered buffers. Or they make buffered cables is another thing, which is really cool. It's just one of those things, like I'm looking at a schematic of a Boss OD1, and I watched this Wampler video where he demonstrates OD1, OD2, and an OD3 or whatever. And he's like, let's take a look at the schematic. And he pulls it up, and I'm looking at it. And I'm looking at the schematic, the DIY schematic, and I'm like, they're different. And they're different because they don't have the buffers. And that's something we as builders, as guitar players, need to be aware of. And this is important information if you're unaware of it. So that's something I wanted to talk about today. I hope it was useful. If it was, think about subscribing. This is what I do here, is run my mouth. It never ends. Half-hour videos about nothing. But then every once in a while I'll drop an album. And they're pretty good, considering I'm not talented and I'm missing two fingers on my fret hand. I would say pretty good might be pushing it. But yeah, there's live music here, fun stuff like original rockish instrumental music that we do, and then I drop an album every year. So that sounds like something you might enjoy. Learning a little bit with me as I go in and I learn. I certainly don't know it all. I'm not a pro, I'm not a tech expert, but I'm on a path and I'm trying to learn. And when I run into something that I think you guys would enjoy or you might benefit from, or something that I didn't know and that I all of a sudden I know, I will take the time to share that with you guys. And that's what this channel's all about. So take care of that. And this is my jam here, the MS2, the mighty MS2. I'm kidding about that. Anyway, I like battery amps. I like remote stuff because we live in an apartment. I like loud or anything but headphones. But I don't like the MS2. I got this for I think it was $5. This was at a like a Salvation Army or a Goodwill, and I was really, really shocked by how great this thing sounds. I shouldn't rip on it, but anyway, watch for those buffers. I know that they make a Klon buffer, which is supposed to be just a great buffer. That one uses an integrated circuit chip, so it's a little physically larger. And you can also build the buffer with 2N3904 or JFET. JFET buffer is the one that I see used a lot. People like those JFETs because on paper they behave not unlike how a vacuum tube behaves. Anyway, being a guitarist is like everything that's put in front of us is it's like being a believer. It's like you have to have a lot of faith in things that might not be true. and I'm here to tell you they're not true. That being said, when you actually experience this stuff and you learn it on your own rather than what people are telling you, like about tubes and tube breakup, and real quickly you learn, for me, like, oh, well, now that I really know what that is, I realize that it's not the end all be all for me. And that for me, the answer isn't having to have giant tube amps. That I really like some of the tones that I'm able to get with my $50 Zoom G1ON or my $100 NuX MG300. Especially considering that I can achieve this really good sound at lower levels. Because tone is a 4-letter word. And there is so much with the gassing and non-truth, just people not really being straight shooters, you know, about this stuff. To me, I know that there is a certain thing about tone being in the fingers. That's if you're a good player, that's going to be reflected in how you play and what we hear. Okay, but at the same turn, if you have a rig set up, it's a complicated signal chain like something David Gilmour, Frank Zappa, or a modern electric guitar player who's going to be using noise gate compression, some type of gain, reverb and delay. If you were to take that player and that instrument and just switch them to a cheap Squire guitar going through this, there's going to be a huge difference. Okay, I don't care how good the guy plays. It's going to sound way better with all that other stuff, and that's where the internet is going to let you down. You know what I mean? You got to learn what you like by experience, and you're not going to experience anything reading some guy telling you what they think is good, because we all have our different thing. That's why Steve Vai sounds different than Yngwie Malmsteen. Just their tone. You know what I mean? And that's not to say that either one of them are bad. That's their own personal choice. And you know what? Yngwie's tone for what he does is so perfect. It's so beautiful and so pure. And I know it's real in vogue. It's been in vogue for a long time to hate on that guy. I saw him live a few times, and I don't hate on Yngwie Malmsteen. I think the guy, as a human being, he's maybe let the fact that he was born with a lot of talent and he developed himself into a guitar icon, he's maybe let that go to his head a little bit. Maybe he's just a Swede. You know, maybe Swedish people are out of their minds and they have ego issues, not on the side of being insecure, but the other side of it, of being completely out of their minds. So, at some point, you need to kind of drop that image and that thing that you've developed in your head about this person and just close your eyes and listen to the music, you know. And for me, that was a revelation of being there when there wasn't an Yngwie Malmsteen, and then all of a sudden he was on the scene and listening to that music, thinking, "Oh my God!" And that was before he was able to make an ass out of himself. So, you know, you just got to try to see through all that stuff that's put in front of you as a guitarist, and be true to yourself, to your own abilities, and be serious and confident. By serious, I mean apply yourself. You know, it's just if I were to have, my story is I was going along. I had learned a little bit on the guitar, and I had made I had it in my mind that this was something I enjoyed to no end, and I wanted to do this and get better at it. And I was going to do it for the rest of my life. I wasn't thinking I was going to be a rock star. Okay? I don't think like that. I really don't. So yeah, I was planning on making a career out of it as far as fun goes. You know, I don't mean making money. I just mean I was going to be a guitar player. And right away, I had this accident, and I'm missing the tops of my 2 fret fingers. And any normal person at that point would say, well, I need to move on. You know, I need to take up an instrument that doesn't require the use of these 2 digits, or just say goodbye to that idea. But I didn't, and I applied myself, and I worked hard. And if you listen to like some of the recordings I've done, like earlier this year, I dropped an album. I would go so far to say that you can't tell. You cannot tell that the person who made this music is making it with half of the tools given to accomplish his goal. You can't tell. So to me, that just represents hard work. And what I'm saying is, if I were to let all of this mental stuff, the the idea that the only way to be successful is to have a $5,000 guitar, a $10,000 tube rig, a Bluto tone amp with tube effects loops and all the fun. It's nice to have that stuff, but to be honest, you don't need any of that. You really don't. You can get away with a minimum of gear. And how it is now in 2020, even the cheap gear is good. Back in the when I was coming up in the early 80s, a lot of the gear that was sold as being pro was not good, meaning it had issues. It hummed, it was noisy, it didn't have the clarity and the response of the stuff that we have now. So having been there, it's a lot easier for me to forgive these types of shortcomings that people micromanage about now, about like the difference between something like a Helix and then having the real thing, like this minute hair splitting thing. And some people are making a big enough deal out of that, like minimizing having anything but an expensive tube rig as you're a joker. You're a kid in the bedroom. And no one deserves to be put in that place. What is the goal? I mean, what's wrong with being a kid in your bedroom? You're learning your craft. You're learning what to do. I mean, to me, the idea of how do we define success as a musician is what you have to have a bunch of women fawning over you after the gig because you roll tubes. There is so much of this stuff put in front of us as musicians, as guitar players, that just needs to go out the window. And I think the best advice I could give anybody, buffer or not, and like again, some of that stuff does matter. There are some basics, but you won't ever hear it. You won't ever hear. Show me a link to a video where a guy tells you the straight dope about why there's buffers in Boss pedals, but there aren't in any of the DIY pedals. Show me that. Because if you're a pedal builder and you do this for a couple of years, you're gonna run into it pretty quickly. You're gonna build some high gain thing that's squealing and you can't figure out. You've done everything. You put a ground wire, shielded cable on the input and disconnected one of the grounds. With a regular ground wire running for the ground. All these tricks that we do before we realize that it's the fact we don't have a buffer that's making the thing unstable. But nobody's going to tell you that. They're not going to come out and tell you because it took them a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to realize that, and they're not going to give that information away for free. They're going to go, hey, and sit on it. Instead, they're going to turn around and go, yeah, my glowing blue Hughes and Quintus amp you need to bow down to it. And it's vacuum, it's 12 AX7s or whatever, because you're a kid in the bedroom with the Line 6. And I'm here to tell you that you can do it. If I can do it with my two fingers, if I can figure out how to make a live rig that runs off of batteries that sounds as good as, check out Blueberry Morning or Jackrabbit Sinistar Attack on this channel. If I can make that with no training in electronics, if I can build that and I can write this music and I can perform it, I think you should be able to do that too. Because I've got news for you. I'm not a smart guy. I'm a goof. I can't do math. I couldn't apply myself in school. I got horrible grades. I'm not some like firstborn, gifted, talented guy. But I've accomplished my goals. And how did I do that? Well, I got a good old lady who helped me out, and I tried. I just put my nose to the grindstone, and I worked. And that's something I feel I am I've earned the right to brag about that shit. You know, maybe not saying like I'm some great musician and I write this great music and my albums are great. That's for you to decide. That's for you to judge. But when I see how we treat each other as guitarists, how we fixate on these things that to me don't really matter, and how hard it is to get at the true nuggets of wisdom that nobody's willing to tell a new guy who shows up in the pedal forum, like, hey, you need to use flux. You know what I mean? Nobody's talking about that stuff. But maybe part of the reason is nobody wants to hear it. You know, some things you have to learn yourself. And you're not going to learn it by watching pedal demos, because anytime I hear a low gain overdrive demo, the guy's clean tone, he's got grit on the clean tone. It's like, I just can't. You know, are you demoing your $3,000 amp or are you demoing the pedal? You know, so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Take care of yourselves. Stay cool. Hug your pets. Be nice. And peace.